If you can figure out which YouTuber I'm imitating doing this, congratulations, you win absolutely nothing. And the reason is because I'm doing this so I don't have to unpack my lav mic. Anyway, attraction, the title of this video. There's different theories as to what it is, where it comes from, but I think that a lot of them fail to capture the full picture, or at least they capture so little and are so narrowed to particular people's experiences that they fail to say anything really relevant or helpful about attraction. And I have many thoughts on this. So let's get into what the is attraction. As with any good essay, I'm going to do a bit of signposting here, mainly so we are on the same page as to attraction and different theories and frameworks for defining it and thinking about it. And I like to split it up into three, which Trinitarian, I don't know, is that Christian of me to divide it into three instead of a binary? But anyway, we have the standard, the vanilla way of looking at it. We have the sex-based framework with stuff like het and homo, gay, bi, lesbian, etc. The stuff that historically has dominated discourses, or at least since the 1800s has dominated discourses, and kind of defines it very much around sex-based. And as an aside, there are some people nowadays that still very much enjoy defining it as this sex-based thing. The next division that we're going to talk about is going to be about like identity-based stuff. This is where the Mo guy, the LGBTQ plus, etc. stuff comes in, where it's not so much about, what you're attracted to. It's about who you're attracted to and what identity the people you're attracted to are. And within this expanded universe of sorts, we also come across the aspec stuff, asexual spectrum. In case you're not familiar with what aspec means, I'm going to keep referring to it as aspec later on. So there you go. That's what I'm going to mean by that. And finally, there's, I guess, a framework that, spoilers, I'm quite sympathetic to, which is very much just presentation based. There's a couple labels that I know of for this one, namely gyno and androsexual, which a bit iffy. They refer specifically to like the Greek words of feminine and masculine. I think like honestly should just redefine existing terms to kind of mean this. But anyway, those are the three systems. And without further ado, let's look at sex based attraction. In order to talk about sex-based attraction, I'm going to need my meat suit again, since we're talking about biological sex, which is maybe not so biological after all. But anyway, sex-based attraction kind of originates primarily in the 1800s. We have the dude, whose name I'll put up on screen over here, who came up with the term homosexual. There's a couple other terms that precede this discovery that homosexual is a label for men who love men. But the point is, it was created as a term. It was given a name in this context of the 1800s where, look, people around that time were very neurotic about sexuality. So forgive me if I'm a bit condescending about this theory. And I mean, it's the best they had at the time. It is what it is, as they say. From there, though, we have stuff like the Institut für Sexualwissenschaft. Yes, sorry for my shit German. And that really tried to do a lot more research and see, okay, what is going on? And we, uncover the transsexual. And it kind of, at that point, people should have started questioning, okay, but like, is attraction sex-based? But anyway, they didn't. And until sex and gender got kind of split in sociology, people didn't really think about it more than just, people of the male sex are usually into people of the female sex. And it's sex-based, clearly, because it's all about procreation, evolutionary psychology, woo. Um, but gay people exist. I think that's a bit of a conundrum for people that believe that it's fully sex based. And then it begs the question, what is sex? Other than what I did with your mom last night. Anyway, Butler, my favorite sociologist, theorist, whatever you want to call him, kind of is like, okay, but what is sex? Is it not itself a social construct? And is it not just gender inscribed upon the body? And yes, I agree, Butler. That is what sex is. So why are we basing our attraction? Like, if someone's attracted to me, they're clearly attracted to femininity, or at least the way that I perform it. They're not attracted to what's in my pants, are they? I mean, they could be. That might be what they are into, but I feel like that initial spark, that initial attraction can't be explained purely by biological sex because, again, trans exist. And yeah, I mean, don't necessarily fully align with sex. Like, my hormones, my secondary sexual characteristics, my genitals, my gonads, they're not all in alignment. So can attraction truly be based on that? I don't think so. Which takes us to the next theory. Okay, identity-based attraction then. So as I alluded to earlier, it's very much around this MOGI LGBTQIA plus 14 nanometer transistor idea of, well, queer identity, right? And before we go too much further into it, I have a very um relevant, let's say, Romanian quote that fits this perfectly, which is to say, Dacă cauți în câte foaie făcută plăcintă, nu mai o mânci. For the people that don't have the luxury of reading the translation on screen, what that means is you're never going to eat the pastry if you look how many folds it's made from, right? And so if you look at how many folds a person's identity is made out of, if you look at, defining it in very fractal ways, defining what lesbian is, and then saying, but that's an umbrella term, we need to specify different like forms of attraction that are sapphic, different forms of attraction that are women loving women. And it's like, well, actually, is it all women loving women or is it non men loving non men? And it's like, do you get the point of the quote now? So, what I find interesting about this is that these micro labels often define people as beings that are attracted to other beings of a particular type and tie it very much into what someone says they are, right? And the way that this usually goes is people coming out and being like, "No, you're a lesbian. You're not allowed to be attracted to trans men, even though you were dating the dude before he decided to transition and you still love him, because that's not what lesbian means. You have to change your label to match the identity." And I mean, that's silly, obviously. That feels silly. And well, it's contentious, to say the least. So I feel like this particular conception of attraction, this particular documentation of attraction, maybe can't, capture the full nuances of people being attracted to other people, not being dependent purely on what someone says they are. Now, for aspec identities in particular, but not limited to, there's this idea of a split attraction model. So the standard set boils down to two of them, usually. Usually boils down to sexual and romantic, which are pretty self-explanatory, and result in identities such as, my identity, which is, fuck. Yeah, that's my identity. But you could conceive of someone being panromantic heterosexual, where they're capable of falling romantically in love with anyone and not being interested sexually or interested in doing sexual things with people that are of the same, gender as them, which seems like a pretty solid model, hey? Now, there's DLC to the split attraction model, and we get to stuff like platonic attraction, which I think is just, do I want to be friends with someone? It doesn't need to be pathologized in this way. There's aesthetic attraction, which is you like how someone looks, uh, which I find interesting to split out on its own. Sensual attraction, which I think particularly is interesting to split out onto its own because I feel that this type of attraction is split between different aspects of romantic and sexual attraction, and ultras, which is basically just emotional attraction that you don't know what kind it is. Which, fair enough, like this one I vibe with. You don't know how you feel about someone, it's an ultras attraction. Good for you. And I mean that in the most genuine way. I don't mean that sarcastically. I do genuinely mean good for you. Um, so I think to some extent though, uh, the video that is linked up there, you should watch it. It's got a very inflammatory title, but to quote the author, creator, uh, some of these Mogai labels are purely just labeling confusion. And maybe to some people at some points in their life, labeling confusion is good. But I guess like splitting up attraction into the minutia and really being like, oh, I'm attracted to some people in this way and other people in this way and other people in this way. It's like, look, it kind of comes from a lack of experience in a lot of cases. And I mean this in the nicest way possible. You don't need to label a lack of experience with different types of attraction as its own thing. Splitting it up into primarily like romantic and sexual is pretty damn helpful for aspec people. And I don't know, I might be aspec to some degree. So I feel like I can kind of talk on this, but going beyond that and labeling stuff like platonic attraction as, well, yeah, like you want to be friends with someone. There's no like there's no need to redefine that as a separate type of attraction within a split attraction model. And if you're talking about like platonic attraction to particular kinds of people, that's called uh please talk to more people and don't be weird about only wanting to be friends with people of a particular identity. Um, I hope no one's actually labeling their platonic attraction as like homoplatonic. That would be absurd. So I'm going to ignore the fact that people probably do. And like aesthetic attraction, right? It's you're allowed to like things. And even on the Avon network, on their wiki, Asexual Visibility Education Network, I believe is the acronym, they openly say, yeah, quite a few asexual people are going to be like, yeah, well, labeling aesthetic attraction as its own thing is kind of weird because you can be attracted to objects, aesthetically speaking. Like, am I iPhone aesthetic because I like the way that iPhones look and collect them? Like, that on its face sounds like an odd proposition. So, yeah, lots of different ways of labeling it, and this conception where it's identity based, I don't think it captures the nuance. I think I guess you can say, yeah, it's taking apart the pastry and trying to turn it back into the flour and water and milk and sugar and all that formed the pastry. And do we need to do it in that way when, well, you want to eat the pastry, right? ce n'est pas un iPhone. I'm not looking up what the actual French word for iPhone is, by the way. Fuck you, Académie Française. But this does beg the question, is it presentation based? Is someone attracted to another person based on the external presentation? And I think my answer is, to put it simply, maybe. I can't say definitively whether it's a result of the external presentation exclusively or if it's a mix of factors, but I do think that presentation-based attraction provides a more compelling description of what brings people together than the previous two types of attraction that I have discussed. And the reason that is because, well, bit grim, content warning for dark humor to some extent, but if you look up the stats for, well, what men, it's not always men, but usually men do to trans women, right? What happens is that men, heterosexual men, straight men, if you will, are attracted to trans women, which societally is a bad thing because trans women are apparently not real women, whatever real woman means. And so you end up with this idea that someone can be attracted to another person based solely on their presentation, but when they open up and see what's, I guess, inside, they suddenly are turned off. Or are they? The social world has a lot of, I guess, impact onto us. So to say that, oh, categorically, people are purely attracted to the sex-based stuff that's in people's pants is silly, because clearly there are quite a few men that are attracted to trans women in spite of what's in their pants. And in fact, not all trans women have the same hardware in their pants. And they might not even be wearing pants, they might be wearing a skirt or a dress, which adds a whole other wrinkle to it, doesn't it? So I think that looking at it from the perspective of presentation-based attraction, it makes the most sense, right? You're not going to be attracted to someone based on something that you don't know by looking at them. You're going to be attracted to someone based on looking at them. Now, personally, as someone that is demisexual, I think maybe. I can't generalize my experiences to the wider population. I just have allo friends to go off of, but it does seem that people are attracted based on what they see rather than other things. For me, obviously, as a demisexual person, probably, I'm not like that. I need a spark of emotional attraction, romantic attraction to get there. But for other people, it seems to be very much a visual thing, a presentation thing. And I think, I don't know, maybe I should do a PhD or a master's looking into this exact topic of comparing what framework of attraction works best to describe a sample of the population. But for now, all I have is this video essay to go off of and have my contention that I am correct, even though I don't fit into the framework that I'm supporting. So in conclusion, yeah. I think that's the best summary. Yeah. Because it's not clear cut since, people are diverse, and reducing it down to any one thing in particular is going to be fraught with the whole problem of, ooh, sociology is moving away from grand narratives because actually they're not good. And I agree, they're not good. But yeah, we need to really think about how we're using language. Why are we using language that we're using? And where does it come from in particular, right? Because relying solely on any one of these three frameworks that I've, I guess, talked about, considered, um, is going to omit experiences that people have. That said, I think that the one that's closest to capturing, let's say, 90% of the population, right? Let's be generous and say that 10% of the population is some flavor of A-spec. Um, like that, the closest one is going to be presentation based. I think that that's pretty definitive, especially based on the fact that uh, adult imagery is such a big industry. What else would it be based on if not presentation, since that's all you're really getting in that type of content? But I digress. As I said, maybe this is something I should go into academia for because it is a topic that I'm quite interested in, but for now, this is where I will leave it off. Thanks for watching, and thanks for waiting for me to actually drop something. Somehow gained a subscriber in this hiatus, but hey, we're gaming.